All right, guys, today we have a real special guest in the house. You probably recognize his voice if you're in New York or the tri-state area. He's contributed a lot to hip-hop radio. He may have sold you a house or a building or something too, you know. I'm talking about the one, the only hip-hop Mike.
My man. Whoa, what an applause. I love it, man. The sound effects slapping off rip. What's happening?
How you doing today, bro?
Great, man. I'm finally in my office. We got everything set up here. I'm in La Jolla, California, a block from the beach. And, you know, we opened up this office. I got an opportunity to run it with a couple of friends of mine and just getting set up, man.
Oh, you own it. You own it?
I don't own it. I'm not the owner. The owner is this guy, Adam Silber. But he has an office based in New York. He wanted to open up on the West Coast. And, you know, he trusted me and a couple of my friends to come out and, like, kind of spearhead the operation. So we're here. We hired a research girl this week. We're hiring a couple of brokers. And, yeah, man, if you're looking for a job in San Diego, holla at your boy. I'm saying.
Damn, man.
I'm hired.
Yo, that's crazy because I've been watching your stories, right? Because I've been seeing your move and everything. And I was like, damn, when I saw that view, I was like, yo, he living large now.
Oh, man. It looks a lot larger than I could afford, but I'm going to be out here. I'm going to do my best to make as much money as possible. And yeah, man, it's been an adventure. I've always wanted to live on the West Coast, but I never knew what was going to bring me here. So it's pretty dope that it was commercial real estate. I never saw that coming.
Bro, I've been watching like all your interviews, and for years I've been seeing you say, I'm thinking about moving out to LA.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about moving out to LA. So then like finally, and it makes sense that you chose La Jolla area, right? Because like I hear like the houses over there and then just in general, it's a real nice place.
Yeah, man. I didn't even know La Jolla existed. You know, I grew up in the hood in New York and like I wanted to go to LA because I used to go out there with Rosenberg all the time for like some events, and we would hang out with Amber Rose and Stone Cold and like all these crazy celebrities. And I'm like, oh, LA seems lit. And then I came to San Diego about a year ago with my boss, and he showed us his house out here. And, you know, I'm a more laid back guy. Like when I was younger, I was running around New York City like crazy, and I think I burnt out a bit. So the La Jolla vibe is a little more laid back, and it's definitely like more my style as I get a little older and try to be a little more polished and professional.
Right. I heard the vibe in San Diego is a lot different compared to LA.
It's a little slower, I'd say.
Yeah.
You know, LA's been getting wild, man. Like last time I was there, it was just pure chaos in LA.
Damn. So with my interviews, I like to do things in a chronological order so we can help the people understand who you are, where you came from, like on a deeper level to understand where you are today, right? So you were born in Queens, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I was born in Flushing, kind of raised between like Jackson Heights and like West Hempstead and Long Island. You know, I would say I'm a Queens kid at heart, but I've moved around so much. I rep Brooklyn, I rep Long Island, and I guess La Jolla now, but yeah, man.
Look at you. You came from the grimy streets of New York. Now you over there. Yo. $10 coffees and shit.
Oh my God. No, I'm not paying. I have a Keurig. I make my coffees with the pods just like I did in New York, man.
Don't be lying. I saw your stories. You was with that Buzz coffee over there.
If you see me with that coffee, Adam Silver paid for it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. If you see me with a fancy coffee, I didn't pay for that coffee. There's somebody else's name is on the cup for sure.
So how long did you live in Queens for?
So it's kind of strange because technically I'm from Long Island. Like my parents growing up, they had a house in Long Island and I went to school out there. But my grandma was in Jackson Heights. And as a kid, my mom would just like leave me with my grandma for like weeks and weeks at a time. So I'd say I was probably there until I was like 8, 9 years old or so. And then my grandma ended up moving out to Valley Stream, Long Island. And then I just kind of stayed out there. You know, I would go back and forth to Queens a lot. I had a lot of friends there, and I would like go down to Jamaica Ave, or I'd like go to Steinway in Astoria. And I had a job in Queens on the weekends at my cousin's hair salon. I was like sweeping the floors in Astoria. But yeah, I mean,
so that was the grassroots of you becoming the barber, right?
Yeah, kinda. So he does women's hair. My cousin does like really big celebrities. He has this salon called Redkin. And they do like really big celebrities with like extensions, with all that. And I got my barber license just because in New York, with a barber license, you could do women's hair. So the thing I was going to do was just like, oh, I'll go get my barber license and I'll work at the salon. And at the time I was living in Brooklyn, and I was taking the train back and forth to the salon in Queens, but I was getting my hair cut in Brooklyn. And when I got licensed, the guy at the barber shop I went to gave me a job. And I just said, you know what, I'm going to stick to doing barbering instead of like being a stylist, you know?
Oh, gotcha.
Girls are very picky with their hair.
Yeah, yeah. So you felt like Queens like kind of like resonated with you the most out of all the different places that you were experiencing.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, Queens was it, you know? I mean, I'm a product of like 50 Cent and Mobb Deep, and like, you know, I always was a fan of like music from Queens, Queens culture, the food, everything. And being in Astoria, like, you know, I was in Astoria years before it became like very, you know, how it is now. Like I was there was more like brick buildings and diners. There weren't any of these cafes. So it was just a different time. Like I worked at a bootleg CD spot in Astoria
Oh,
for a
before
while.
the gentrification, right?
Yeah, before it got very expensive. So I mean, when I was there as a kid, it was probably less than $1,000 a month rent. Now you probably can't find anything there for less than 4 or 5 thousand. You know?
It seems like that's happening everywhere, bro.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
but not. I mean, I was there when there was parking on 30th Ave. Like now, you can't even find a spot.
So you're coming up in the 90s, is that right?
Well, I was born in 90. So, I mean, when I was a kid, my job at the salon, I was probably like 10, 11 years old. And I did that maybe to like 14. So, I mean, it was like early 2000s, I'd say.
Right.
But it's
And are you growing up with any siblings at the time?
so I have a sister, but the thing is like my sister, she always kind of lived in Long Island with my mom. She wasn't really at my grandma's as much in Queens. I was the firstborn, so I think, you know, there was an adjustment there. I think by the time she came around, they were like kind of more used to having like a kid, and that's really more when I would be in Long Island, like when my sister was around. But we were together for a couple of years, and then like my dad got in a lot of trouble, and I ended up going with him, and she stayed with my mom, and we just kind of went our separate ways for a long time.
What you mean in trouble?
Me or
No,
him?
no, him. Yeah, yeah. I was like, what do you mean in trouble?
So I mean, in all transparency, he had like a little bit of a gambling problem, and he was working for a big company. And I don't want to tell his story. You could
Right.
go online and like Google him and find out about all his stuff. But I mean, long story short, he had a gambling problem, and he had to do some time. You know, he got in a little bit of trouble and had to do some time. And while we were going through like the court case and everything with him, I ended up living with him in like a smaller apartment, and you know, my sister stayed at the house with my mom, and you know, we kind of just split up a little bit for a while. And then he ended up doing 5 years. I moved to Florida for a year, but I got like kind of bored and I came back. So, I mean, that was 2002. So I was like 12, 13 years old. And you know, I'd worked at the salon a couple years. I went to Florida for a year. I got sick of it. I came back and I went right back to like working at the salon and just running around, you know, New York.
What was that like for you to experience that at that time as a kid, though? Like to see like your dad going through
Um,
that, and then like obviously it was like a toll on your parents' like marriage, right?
Yeah, I mean, right away they split up, and I didn't like really understand it. You know, I think that my mom didn't handle it great. You know, she took it very personally, even though she was in a very good situation. Like his gambling didn't affect the family. Like that was the thing. My dad's a very secretive guy, and he does like even to this day, like he'll go to work and he'll wake up at like 5 a.m., go to work at 6. And like you won't see him until 8 o'clock at night, and you're like, "What have you been up to all day?" And it's just like working, and like that's it. So I understand why she was like very pressed about stuff, but you know, the things that he did, it hurt his company more than it hurt the family. And when he went away, you know, she didn't lose her house, she didn't lose her car or anything. But I built a bit of a resentment for her because I felt like, well, your situation's still good and his situation's bad. And you're kind of just being like mean to the guy. And that's kind of what led to me going with him. So it was tough, you know, at the time, but I don't think I fully understood like the psychology behind their relationship and, you know, his personal struggles with that gambling addiction and her kind of insecurities. And for me, it was just easier to stay out of it. You know, going to Florida with my aunt was like I didn't really get too involved. I lived with them near, you know, the beach, and I was just kind of chilling. And when I came back, you know, I just hit the streets. I was running around like, you know, with my friends and stuff. So I think it weighed more on my sister than it did on me. But in retrospect, you know, down the line, I learned a lot from that whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a real time.
Which part of Florida were you staying in?
So it's called Vero Beach. It's like the East Coast, like 2 hours south of Orlando, 2 hours north of West Palm.
That's cool, man.